Yes, we're in this webinar today called Design Your Impact. Before we start with the panelists, I'll give a quick overview of where we are with the Impact Playbook that's been developed by Europeana over the past few years. Marco will give a bit more of that early context to where it came from. Maya and Dafydd will introduce the playbook itself and take you through the different steps that are in the playbook. Then we'll move into a session on a bit of a discussion on how it's been used in practice. And we'll have a discussion there as well. So that's where we'll hopefully come back to all your questions. And then, as I've mentioned, part 3 will be that informal knowledge sharing session, that discussion and debate. So first of all, I'd like to ask the panelists to unmute themselves and to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Marco, who will be speaking first today. Marco, please.
Hello, everybody. My name is Marco Rendina. I am actually the Managing Director of the European Fashion Heritage Association, which is managing the thematic fashion aggregator for Europeana. But I've been working for a lifetime at Istituto Luce Cinecittà, which is the oldest audiovisual memory institution in Italy, where I'm still senior consultant for international projects. So we can easily say that I picked the sexiest side of heritage, fashion and film and television. But today I'm here to talk to bring you through a brief history of even a sexier thing, which is the Impact Playbook. And I will take like 7-8 minutes of your time to explain a bit the history behind it.
Great. And Maya, you're next to my screen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maya Drabczuk from Warsaw, Poland. I work at the National Film Archive Audiovisual Institute. So I get, how to say it, half of the sexiness that Marco has because I have audiovisual in me. The fashion, I hope so, but not professionally. So I'm responsible at FINA for our various collaborations, mostly international, that are focusing on providing access and use of our audiovisual collection. I'm also part of EU Screen. EU Screen is also one of the aggregators to Europeana, the audiovisual one, focusing on television, but currently also more broadly audiovisual European heritage. And I'm also involved in Fiativta, so everything is audiovisual these days. But as I'm involved in a number of initiatives and projects, I always want to understand why I'm doing them. And I think hence the interest in impact, and hence this focus on understanding the why are we doing things, and the impact of our activities as the cultural heritage institutions. So thank you, and I'm looking forward to today.
Great, thank you. And on to Dafydd.
Hi everyone, I'm Dafydd. I'm joining from Wales. I'm Head of Access and Public Programmes at the National Library of Wales. And I'm always interested in how cultural heritage institutions articulate the impact of their activities. And that's what brought me to the playbook. I wasn't involved in its creation, but came across it in its very early days, just before it was launched. And from there really saw how useful it was as a resource, saw its potential, and have become a practitioner since then. I'm also an elected member of the Europeana Members Council, and those of you who are familiar with Europeana with the Europeana network will know that we organise into communities, and I am a member of the Impact Community Steering Group.
Great, and last but not least, Rob doesn't have his video on, but Rob will be managing our chat today, and the questions and answers, and we'll bring him in later. So Rob, can you introduce yourself as well?
Hi all, I'm Rob Davis. I work for the Digital Heritage Research Laboratory at Cyprus University of Technology. We are leading activity 6 of the Europeana Common Culture Project, which is dealing with various aspects of capacity building, one of which is a series of webinars. And this is I think, the penultimate activity in that series of webinars, although the series of webinars on impact is in itself, I think, 4 or 5 long. And I've also been working more generally with Nicole and others in the impact community to do with aspects of impact for Europeana.
Yes, Rob and I have been working on one of the impact assessments, which we're aiming to publish before the end of the year. And it's been a great, sensible voice in terms of reviewing and giving some feedback and guidance. So what I thought would be a good way to start is to make sure everyone is awake and to ask you, so everyone, I'm talking to the attendees, not to the panelists, what your experience has been with the Europeana Playbook. So we're not expecting everyone to already have used it, but we're curious to see if you have used it. So everyone who's there, you should see a poll in front of you. So please do vote. We'll give it about 25 seconds. We've got 5 seconds left. Half of people have voted. Okay, well, 30 seconds left. All right, we're at 30 seconds now. So it seems like there are no more votes coming in. So, oh, there are. Anyone left? It's a multiple choice, by the way. I should have explained that in the beginning. Sorry. Okay, great. So hopefully can you all see the results? Just Maya, yep, you're nodding, great. So most people, let's see, sort of equal. A third of people have downloaded it but haven't really used it. A third of people are here to hear more about it. I wonder if I had said it was multiple choice, if more people would have said that. Some people, a few people don't feel like they know what it is, and 2 people have used it, which is really great. And I wonder if you have used it, or if you've read it, or if you have any initial thoughts, please do share them in the chat. We'll come back to them later as well. So again, we're here to hear from your experiences as well. So thank you very much for that. And now I'll just do a very quick overview in terms of the some very quick statistics and information about the Impact Playbook. So it was launched in the first phase in 2017. The second phase around data collection and methodologies was launched earlier this year. We haven't done a huge amount of work in terms of communicating this yet, because as you've realized, the past I keep thinking it's December, no, but the past 6 to 7 months have been quite challenging. And so we're really thinking about how we get phase 2 to a bigger audience at the moment. And that's part of this webinar series, of course. Phases 3 and 4 are in development. We have 2 webinars in the new year. And we should have a skeleton of phase 3 and hopefully the same of phase 4. And in that sense, those webinars will be really great sense checkers for us in terms of checking we're going along the right lines and meeting the needs of the people who are going to use it. We have had almost 3,000 downloads of the resource. That's mostly phase 1. And we found out recently that around 800 of those downloaders are not Europeana network members, which is really interesting for us. It shows us that we're getting beyond the Europeana network. The Europeana network is huge. We have 3,000 people, I think. I'm not sure of the latest numbers, but it's really great to know that we're also getting beyond the Europeana network. For that, I will stop talking and hand over to Marco. And he should be able to control the screen. Great. Yeah. So you're on mute, Marco.
I still can't hear you. You're still muted somehow. Okay, yeah, I think he's searching how to unmute himself.
Sorry, because I get the control of the screen and the Zoom control disappeared. I had to enable them via menu. I'm really sorry for this. Now it seems that I had access back, so I should be able to move forward. So let's go a slide before. With this, it was short introduction. I wanted to report to you the brief history behind the Impact Playbook. As European Fashion Heritage Association, as I have been involved in the early stages of this, and we were sort of a guinea pig in its development, in the sense that our case study was used to test the actual playbook. So we tried to assess the impact of the activity of our association, of our aggregator in our stakeholders. And that's why we work it as a sort of test. So let's start from the main concept, the impact. So the measuring of what has changed and how. I suppose that as cultural heritage professionals, and I suppose most of you fall in this category, did you ever need to demonstrate the impact of your work? Or have you been curious to know if the daily activities or a specific project of your institution had an effect on people's lives and actually produced the change? Or have you looked for tools that could help you measure this change? Well, the Impact Playbook and its underlying methodology has been conceived to support you answering those questions, this kind of question. In March 2020, the Europeana Impact community made a survey, and these were that you see here on the screen were some of the answers to the question, why are you interested in impact? So again, read some of them. For example, to show importance of the digitization of cultural heritage, to show the return on investment to internal and external stakeholders who engage with and support my online collections, to see what's our mission beyond the daily operations, visitor metrics, and pass this to the others. Or I am interested in impact as I want to better plan our professional activities and better assess and prove the importance of our work. So as you can see, the interest in assessing the impact of our activities was not coming only from the need to showcase the importance of our work or the return on investment to our funders or stakeholders, but also from the will to strategically plan future activities or inform new strategies. This is another important thing the impact assessment can do. And I think that this is sometimes underestimated. From the same survey, you can see that measuring impact is indeed considered really important. An average, the first question, which got an average of over 4.5 on a scale of from 0 to 5. But at the same time, people are not confident that their institution are actually assessing well the impact of their work, like you can see from the last question. And here comes the Impact Playbook that has been developed by cultural heritage and impact professionals to guide you through the process of identifying the impact that your institution has or is aiming to have, and providing a common approach that can be applied throughout the cultural heritage sector. So we start a brief history of the playbook and the underlying methodology, which can date back to 2012. Probably this was the very beginning with the publication from Simon Tanner of the book Measuring the Impact of Digital Resources and the Balanced Value Impact Model, which can be considered the foundation of the methodology we use. And Simon Tanner participated to the kickoff of our activity and throughout all the first phase of the design of the playbook. Of course, he was our mentor, say. In 2014, the impact assessment entered officially the Europeana Strategy 2020, a document. In the strategy, the case of the Europeana 14-18 campaign was analyzed and its impact was assessed. I think there also a very nice video was produced. There is a lot of documentation you can find on Pro if you're interested in it. This was the first real example of impact assessment in the Europeana community, I think. And in 2017, finally, after a collaborative work inside the European Initiative, there was a specific group in which I was lucky to be part of. The phase 1 of the Impact Playbook was launched, and here we are. this is a tweet from Julia Fallon, which was coordinating this community also at that time, announcing the release of the Impact Playbook. And yeah, what are the things about the playbook? Using the survey of playbook downloaders at the beginning of this year, we generated this word cloud with their answers to the question, can you describe the playbook in one sentence? As you may notice, the words practical and useful, apart from, of course, impact and guide and cultural, come out quite strongly. As this reflects the ethos of the tool we developed here, and that Maya and David are presenting more in details today. And with this, I would give the floor to them, to Maya in particular. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you,
For this
Marco.
lovely introduction. I'll try to take over the slides, control over the slides. I think yeah, just wait a second. Yes, okay. So I'm not sure how many of you joined us last time at the first webinar when we briefly also already back then introduced the playbook. But so apologies if I may say or simply repeat myself, but this is all meant in a positive spirit. Marco gave us a beautiful introduction to the question about why we are doing this, why as cultural heritage institutions, why do we want to understand, better understand the impact of our actions, and how the playbook has been brought to life. And now, together with David, we'll try to briefly take you through the phase one. So the phase one, as you know, there are 4 phases. The first one is about designing your work, designing also the impact, or thinking about the impact that you want to have as an institution, as an organization, in a specific activity that you are focusing at this stage. So this is the book. Some of you have downloaded this, so I hope that you have at least scroll through it, but for some of you it is new. So I'll try to briefly explain what's in there. This is basically a guideline. This is okay, again, a sexy name is a playbook, but what it is a list of recommendations, list of like step-by-step invitations to how to the way you can design and think about your work when it comes to impact assessment. This is a super flexible tool, and this is, I think, what I appreciate most about it, that you can, depending on the scale of your actions and depending on the time that you have for your work on this, and depending on also on your priorities and resources that you can put into this activity, the impact playbook is there for you, and it's out there, and you can choose. Of course, the best case scenario is when you go through the whole list of activities, and actually they are put in a form of workshops and sessions that you should have together with the team. But I think it's possible to cherry pick as well. And it's up to you. It's up to your priorities. And today, also because of the time limitations, we decided to cherry pick as well. And we'll try to show you just 2 of many more tools that the playbook offers. I already said that you need a team to make it happen. And I think this is also one of the biggest, let's say, characteristics of this tool, that you are not able, I would say, to do it, to design your work on your own. I think it would, like, there is no point here. You need a team. You need a team of experts bringing in all sorts of expertise to the table. You need to first identify your project, and this is where the playbook also comes in to help. And you need to invite all the stakeholders, maybe at the first point, a limited group, to the table, and then kick off the work together. Just as a brief reminder, for this, following Simon Tanner's definition, impact in this playbook, in this methodology, in this framework is seen as changes that occur for stakeholders or in a society as a result of certain activities. So you can see again that the focus here is on people, on stakeholders, or on various user groups that are somehow involved in your activities. Can be on the user side, on the recipient side, that sounds bad, but like the partner side, on the like being a user or audience of your activities. But stakeholders are also the policymakers that have a say in what you do. These are also the funders. This is your institution itself and your director or board of directors involved. So this scope is wide, and I think I also see it as a value of this approach, that you can, or you should really, when thinking about your actions, when planning your actions, when designing your actions, that you need to take into account the wishes and interests of all these stakeholder groups. So we always start with a project, right? When you want to assess something, you need to have something to assess. This is super clear. This sounds actually super banal, but this is fact. So the first thing that the playbook asks you to do, to be very specific about how you design, how you see your project, and that you really try to briefly capture what the project is about. It is nothing like, it's not that it's set in stone what you write and how you phrase it, because I think this is also the purpose of this design phase in the playbook, that it actually allows you to think about your approach and maybe verify it at the end of the design phase. But there are some, you need to have a starting point. You need to have a proposition, a project proposition. And today our project proposition, surprise, surprise, is that we organize a series of webinars for cultural heritage institution, cultural heritage professionals and other stakeholders interested in introducing the impact assessment to their work. And through today's super short activities, we'll try to show you how you can design the impact, or think about the impact of your project that you're running. First things that the design phase in the playbook asks you to think about are strategic perspectives and value lenses. Strategic perspectives are the perspectives that are crucial to your own organization. So why are you doing the project? Why are you interested in this initiative? Are you mostly interested in its economic impact or the economic value of the project? Or is it all about the social value? I think for us, for our sector, the beating heart is kind of the special one, but it is also related, or can be related, to innovation, or maybe just organization and the changes that can occur in the organization itself. It's not that you need to choose one. It's very often, I think, we as practitioners, we know that very often we need to, and we want to think about all four perspectives. But I think sometimes we forget about the balance and about like setting priorities. And it's very good to understand at the beginning of a project, what is it that you are really after, and what is the value, what is the area that you really want to contribute to and see effect in. So this is the perspective of your organization. And then there are the value that our project can bring to the stakeholders, to our audiences, to everyone involved. Is it about learning experience? Is it about community building? Is it about legacy, utility, or prestige? This is again something that it's not just one answer that is correct here. It can be, again, about everything combined. But again, it's about just simply asking yourself this question: what is it? What is the impact that we want to achieve? How do we want to involve with in a dialogue, in a discussion with our audiences? What is the special value of digital heritage in our case? But I think you can really easily translate it also to other areas of work. It doesn't have to really be about digital heritage only. So what is the value from the user perspective? And then when you combine these two, I hope you can see this lovely drawing. You as the project coordinator, let's call it like that, you get this amazing perspective on the work, and you see how you can really, through your actions, through your activities, get into a dialogue or have an impact on your stakeholders that you have identified as relevant for this initiative. I hope this is clear. The playbook I probably explained it much better than I have just did. But I like this approach again because, first of all, it makes me think about my priorities as an organization, but then it makes me kind of open up my mind and eyes to the needs of the others and wishes. And it's not that this is like me going out of my comfort zone, saying, okay, I'm a curator, I know my collection best, but maybe, okay, let's see how the others see it. What's the value, and how do they want to be connected to my work? As I earlier said, stakeholders are key to this approach. They are super relevant. I'm sorry. We need to understand better why they are relevant to us and who they are. And here the playbook comes in with support yet again. And first, the definition. Okay, so a stakeholder, I think I briefly mentioned this before, is just a person or a group or a community organization that who you expect to experience a change, or who you design your activities around. So these are, as I earlier mentioned, this is our audience. These are our partners in crime. These are the policy makers, funders. These can be media. If we want to, for example, if we're working on a project with a foreseen outreach, can be a group of technicians that we work with. Like, the list continues. But the key thing is that we need to identify them all before we start working on the project, and we need to understand who will be involved in the whole process. Once we establish that, and this is again in the playbook, this comes as a workshop, then together as a team, you think about all these stakeholders, and you see it as a part of the process when drafting your work on the project. Then the playbook asks you to try to understand them better. And this is when you're invited to an empathy map. And the suggestion or the recommendation is that you do one separately for each of the stakeholders group that you have listed before. And this is where you try to, when you create a persona, I think this is following the design thinking methodology. This super nice. It is also stakeholder oriented. So this is all about understanding better who our stakeholders are. And this is where you ask yourself questions about the environment and the feelings of the person. So what is the person feeling when encountered, like, not really in general, right? That would be too broad, but when connected to our project, with relation, maybe like that, with relation to our project. Let's say that in our case, this is us creating a webinar for you. So in my case, it would be, okay, I feel that an amazing work has been done on the on the framework, the impact framework by Europeana and the bigger team, that the playbook is there, but I feel that it hasn't been really, that there is more to be done, or could be more broadly promoted, it could be more used. That I feel that there is definitely more room for a discussion about impact. What I see is that our sector is kind of struggling with understanding or measuring the value of our work. This is something that Marco said earlier, that it's not only about numbers anymore, even though very often we are asked about these, and I have nothing against them, but I want to understand more. I want to understand what is the change that my work is creating. And I see that my colleagues are struggling with the same questions as well. And I hear this from them. I hear that there is a need to understand better. I hear that, oh, we're a bit lost, where we would like to find out more. This is a bit tricky. So what we say and do is that we gather a group, we try to come up with a plan, and we put it in place. So there is a list of challenges that we need to overcome to make it happen. I'll just name technology. Come on, just try to share the screen with everyone and not lose all the buttons there. This is, I'm sorry, this is, I think you understand my point here. But there are the benefits there, and this is, and these are the gains. This is why we're doing this. This is also how this project, this series of webinars, enriches us, enriches me professionally, but enriches us also as a community from my perspective, and creates this added value to the discussion on the impact. So this is from my perspective as a stakeholder relevant. I think the observations would be different for a cultural heritage professional who is not involved, who hasn't been involved in this work. Maybe we have with us researchers who very often also want to work in this way, but have different kind of observations, different kind of questions. Maybe we have policymakers with us who are the ones that we need to report to, but they are also involved in this process. So you see that the empathy map will differ for each of these stakeholders group. And again, for more information on how to fill it out properly, I encourage you to download the playbook and to go through all the hints that the playbook suggests, and you will see how enriching the experience is, and how sometimes surprising, even if you do it on your own. Okay, so that was me, and if David is ready to take over.
Mm-hmm. Right. Talking about the technical challenges, I'm not entirely sure how I'm going to take control of the slides from you.
If you prefer, I can do.
Yeah. I think I've just given it to you now.
Let's see.
Yes.
I don't see any changes to the slides.
Oh.
Aha.
That might have been me, sorry. Can you try?
Okay.
Yes.
There we are. Excellent. Great. Thanks. Okay. So if you've been through the process outlined in the playbook, you'll have done your strategic perspectives. As Maya was saying, you've looked at how your organization looks at your activity strategically. You will have thought about the value lenses and thought about value more broadly because of the resource that we have in the playbook. And that is the value that you're delivering for your stakeholders. And then you will also have done some stakeholder analysis, thought of the different stakeholders your activity will deliver value for, and done some empathy mapping. Now we move on to the change pathway, where it kind of all comes together as an impact assessment. So these are the components of the change pathway, which we will be using to map the process from your activity to the impact that it's delivering for a stakeholder. So the stakeholder, just to explain each of these headings, the stakeholder first is that person that we're designing the pathway for, or designing the activity for, one of them at least, because then there are probably several, but it could be just the one. The impact then are the changes that have occurred in or for our stakeholders that our activities have contributed to. So that's the change that we ultimately want to see. Then the activities is the proposed project or any kind of activity that you see as being instrumental in delivering that change. The resources are the investments that we're making in time and money to realize those activities. So it's important to keep that in mind so that we can see the relationship between the resources that we're investing in our activity and the change it's causing or delivering. Then we have our outputs. Now I should note that up to the outputs, these are things that we really have direct influence over. Once we go beyond the outputs, and you can see the line separating outputs and outcomes, the outcomes are really the changes that we have less control or influence over. Now outputs, and it's sometimes difficult to distinguish between outputs and outcomes. These are the direct results of our activities, and I'll give you an example. These are things that are usually immediately measurable from your activity. And I'll give an example of that in a minute or two. And then we look at the outcomes, which are the changes that have occurred in or for our stakeholders as a direct result of our activities. That's a very important definition to make, because I realize that it's quite tempting sometimes when we go through this process for us to think of the outcomes in terms of what it's delivering for us as institutions or as organizations that are delivering the activity. What I really like about the change pathway and about the impact playbook generally is that it puts the focus, once you've established your strategic perspective, it puts the focus entirely on the stakeholder and the impact that it's delivering for them. And that needs to be kept right at the center of our discussions throughout. Okay, I'm going to give an example. So this is an exercise that we would have usually done on paper. I print out a big A2 sized paper, I get the post-it notes out, and as Maya was saying, this is something you want to be doing as a team. And I'd emphasize that there is as much value in the process itself as in the product, as we have in the product at the end, really. Those discussions that you have as a team about what you're delivering, the stakeholders, the impact, it's all so important to the success, I feel, of your project. So I'll just jump to say we have our stakeholder. I put down a cultural heritage institution professional, assuming that quite a few of us here would fit into that category. But you could be anyone who is here to as part of the webinar. And then the impact that we're trying to deliver is that cultural heritage institution understands and articulates its own impact. Mark Cohen pointed out that need from the survey that was run in March. And then the activity is the webinar itself. Those are the three things. The resources, these are just some, and you may be able to think of additional ones that we could have put there. Preparation for the webinar, we've put in time to prepare our presentations and to prepare the slides and so on. The impact playbook itself is a resource. So much work has gone into developing just the first phase of the impact playbook, and that's one of four. But that is a resource there. And then there's your time, our time here in the webinar. Outputs. I can see from the number of participants that we have a number of people in the webinar. We can immediately measure that. That is an output. That shows some degree of the success of the activity in engaging with our stakeholder. And then hopefully you will give your feedback to the webinar and the discussions that will follow soon. That will help us again to measure the outputs, the success of what we are doing at some level. But then we look at the change that it's causing. Now you will be able to see the difference here between the outputs and outcomes, hopefully. Now, just to explain, the things that are on the left side of the outcomes column are chronologically the soonest change that we hope to see. And then as you move right towards the impact, it chronologically is further away. That line down the middle is called the accountability line. And it's that at that point, and it could be anywhere really in the outcomes column, it's the line where we can say that is a change that has been caused directly by our activity. But it reaches a point where there are changes that we hope to see, some expected behaviors or hoped for behaviors, where we cannot say that was directly as a result. We may have contributed to that, and logically we can say that we've contributed, but it's very difficult to prove that that change is a result of our activity. So here are some of the changes. Better understanding of the playbook. Hopefully you will feel that you will have by the end of the session, that you become an impact practitioner, that you start using the playbook as a resource. That you're using, or again, looking at that chronologically, first the understanding, then using the playbook to assess your impact, and then becoming a practitioner, someone who is using this regularly as part of your work. Then you may go on to train other professionals within your institution. You may share your impact experiences with the wider community, and it would be brilliant if you would do that. And then we see the impact framework becoming embedded within your institution. It's something that your colleagues feel is useful because of the training that they've received from you, or they've attended workshops. And then hopefully we'll see a wider awareness of the impact of cultural heritage institutions. That's not just within the cultural heritage institutions themselves, because we are convinced, we believe that we are making a difference, but we need to be convincing others as well. We need to be putting forward a compelling case that we are delivering change, wider change as a result of our activities. And then hopefully the impact will be that the cultural heritage institution that understands and articulates its own impact. Another impact that we would hopefully see is that it's not just about the institutions being able to understand and articulate its own impact, but that society in general come to see the impact of cultural heritage on so many more aspects of life as a result of our ability to articulate that more effectively. So that's one example of the change pathway being used. As I say, this is the first stage. This is just the first phase in the playbook. It's really useful as a design tool. We would then go on to assess, and that's really the focus of the webinar. But the question is, coming back to this change pathway, is how do we measure the change? The outputs, as I say, are quite straightforward to measure. How do we measure a better understanding of the playbook? How do we measure that someone has become a practitioner, and so on? And the further you can go towards the impact, the more compelling your case is that your activity is actually delivering that intended impact. I'll hand it back to you, Nicole.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Maya and Dafydd, for giving us that overview. And I am just going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually have a little bit more of a view of the chat which is going on. But I'll ask Rob also to come in. So Rob, can you maybe just give us a bit of a view of?
Yeah, there's nothing yet in either the chat or the Q&A, so I guess people are listening quite intently. But I do encourage everyone to comment, probe, ask questions, raise anything you don't understand or you think is strange. Whatever, but either in the Q&A or in the chat, please do join in, because it'll feed the conversation later on.
Great. I'm also just seeing there's a lot of people from, so there's someone from the US, so Seth from the US, some fellow Welsh participants as well there, Dafydd. Also some more people from the Netherlands. Hi, welcome. It's probably raining where you are as well. So moving back to the discussion then, I'm going to put us back and try and share my screen again, which actually I may not be able to do, so I'll just maybe not do that. I wonder then, so Maya, Marco, Dafydd, can you tell me how you have actually used the playbook in practice? So Dafydd, you gave this hypothetical example of today, which I wholeheartedly agree with, nicely done. Maybe do you have some examples? I'll look at you, Maya, first, because something came up in our last webinar, which I think might be interesting to cover. about proposals and working at the beginning of a project. And Marco as well.
Yes, so thank you, Nicole. I think one of the areas where you can use the playbook, even though I really believe that you should have this conversation about why and for whom you're doing your you're doing basically what you're doing every time you're starting something new, and it's a initiative, a project, something that you do in a team, and something that is relevant. I think it's always good to have an answer to these two questions, and I keep saying that, I think, everywhere. But one of the areas that the playbook has already served me, and I've seen it being super useful, is when we worked on various proposals, EU grants. This is part of my job. This is what I do. I work on European projects. Some of them are linked to Europeana and activities around Europeana. As I told you, I'm involved in a number of activities. Sometimes also together with Marco, and I don't know whether you also apply for different funding. It doesn't have to be European, but I think one of the questions currently very often is that, okay, the question about sustainability and the question of the impact of your work. That's a very good question. I think I kind of like that they are there. There was a time that they weren't, and something was missing. So this is again when our funders want to understand how we as organizers, as coordinators, want to measure, but first design the impact and the effects of our activities. And this is where I think more and more we put the impact framework, Europeana Impact Framework, as a methodology that we're gonna we promise to use, and in the end we are using in assessing the impact of our activities. It is I think for the reasons that we earlier listed already, so that it is stakeholders oriented, that it gives you an overview of clear, very easy to use tools. It is flexible, so you can really adjust it to your needs, also related to the specific project, initiative, proposal that you are working at. And as you know probably, when you work on a proposal, it's a teamwork, it's a team effort, it's a consortium very often. So you also have this aspect of having a team that, first of all, you need to meet with, and you need to understand whether you all agree on the same approach. And this is exactly when the question about strategic perspectives, the value lenses, but also the empathy map and the change pathway, I think they allow you to have this discussion. This is also something that David said, that the process is as interesting as the product. So that really it opens you up, and it makes that the project and your perspective, your approach can only benefit from this experience. It is a bit time consuming, but I think it's worth the effort to better understand your needs. So I think in this sense, it has proven to be super useful. And I think, we've currently in a project together with Marco, in which I'm also using the playbook to assess our impact through the number of activities, but also assessing the collaboration in the consortium. And it's proving to be really helpful. I don't know, Marco, if there's anything you would like to add to that.
Well, basically, I will echo what you were saying. I think that you said in the beginning in your first presentation that eventually you can take also just parts of this. I mean, I'm not saying this as best practice, but the truth is that some of these tools that we have seen today, like the empathy map, can be of value in themselves. So you can use them in your context. And the case we had a case, for example, because apart from the project that Maya was mentioning, we're working together. We also have been involved in two generic service projects in the European ecosystem. I mean, and one was, for example, about a development of a crowdsourcing platform for metadata enrichment for Europeana, so to be connected with Europeana, basically. Crowdheritage.eu is the project if you're interested to look at it. And there we sold, let's say, to our funders, to the Commission, the fact that at the end of the project we would have done an impact assessment of the tool we will develop. We realized that to do this seriously, like also Nicole was saying before, it's something that takes quite a long time. It's not something that you do in 1 month, for example. It takes much more than 1 month, and it needs resources, time, and it's quite complex. So usually, in this specific case, our project was 18 months, the whole project. So to realize this platform, test it, implement it, and blah blah blah. Inserting also a full impact assessment was impossible, basically. So what we did for example, there is when we organized a workshop with some stakeholders in which we asked them to test the platform, basically, we did also a round of empathy maps with them. So we asked each of them to kind of fill in and discuss, or to explain to them what we were saying, which was their experience in using the specific software to the Crowdheritage platform. And so they were paying the gain, what they were feeling, what they were saying and doing about this. So we got a glimpse of which were the reaction from them in respect to the tool that we were delivering. It's a very partial thing, actually. I wouldn't call it an impact assessment. It wasn't, but as a tool, it was useful for that. In another project, which was called Europeana Media, in which we have developed a player for the Europeana Collection Portal and a media player for the Europeana Collection Portal. There we involved also Nicole from the Europeana Foundation, and there we set up an impact assessment plan that should be developed in, if I remember correctly, Nicole, 9 months. So it's something quite long, in which we would involve at different stages stakeholders and having with them a sort of either interviews or virtual workshop to get feedback from them. So I think that impact is becoming an important part also in the evaluation of the project proposal that you submit. And so I'm not saying that you have to use it just for this, because it would be stupid, frankly. But I think that it's something that you have to take in consideration anyway nowadays when you submit a proposal. So they always ask you to measure the impact of your
Sorry to interrupt, Marco. I have a question here also that comes back to the example you just used, which was, it's really about the investment of resources linked to the size of the project, and how can you justify a lot of time going into such a process when maybe it's such a small project, and how can you maybe that's the first question. Also, just to say, there's a lot of great questions coming up in the chat, and I'm hoping that a lot of people are able to stay. There's some people who are already saying they're not able to stay for the next 30 minutes, but maybe just let's cover that question. So about the time you put into this process and the reward, what comes out at the end. What do you get also through the process? Not even just the output at the end, the impact assessment, but what do you gain from the process?
I must say probably Maya also can say something on their side of the feed. I think that the evaluation of the cost benefits of this kind of activity, of course, is always relative. Depends really on the kind of project you have and on the time frame which should be developed. In our case, for example, for the Crowdheritage project, we decided not to do it, not because we thought that was not useful, but just because we didn't have the time, the physical time to do it and the resources to do it. I was telling you that this is a process when you are assessing, for example, a service or a product or a specific sort of activity that can take several months, because you have to do several steps, engage your stakeholders, which of course is not just one kind usually. And so you usually in playbook is also explaining how to do that. You should run eventually workshops, so gather them and explain to them what you are doing. So it's something that it takes quite a lot of time. So the fact that if it's worth or not, it depends really on the resources and the time that you have. I would say that this is important, not just, as we said before, also Maya underlined it, to have some final numbers like, okay, we had this kind of impact, 1, 2, 3, and we have these results, and yeah, we are happy with it, or judge you if you should be happy or not. I think it's important because in the process you understand things that probably you were not seeing before. So it's the process itself that sometimes informs you on other ways or other strategies that you should embrace to reach your very final objective. So I think that the impact assessment per se, the methodology, is also very useful, even if this is not the first thing that you think about, in strategize, how can you say, to strategize, so to make strategic decisions that were not immediately evident to you. So when you go through this process and you went through your stakeholders and you do this exercise with the empathy map and other stuff, you can understand things that were not clear to you before. So I think that this tool is also useful to make you understand the direction that you have to take to really reach your objective. And I shut up now.
No, Marco, that was really great. We're going to have to close the formal. I keep saying inverted commas formal. It's just because we can't see we can't see people who are in the room. Just also finish the recording. I'll do like a little bit of a wrap up, just to say that there's been a lot of things covered in this webinar, a lot of issues raised and a lot of questions posed by the participants who we haven't been able to answer all of them, but we are going to try and do that in the next 30 minutes. This won't be recorded, but I'll also take a note of what we've been discussing. So then in the summary, we can write up all the questions that haven't been answered and hopefully provide an answer. So to everyone who's joined us and won't be joining us for the next 30 minutes, thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Great that you've been here. We will try and share a recording with everyone. Everyone who's still in the room, I've shared some links in the chat to the Europeana 2020 conference. That's in a couple of weeks. Gina, who's here, will be very happy that I've done so. It's a free conference you're able to attend. And we've just talked today about how many sessions there's going to be. So please do join us for that. The next webinar is on the 25th of November at 3 o'clock in Central European time. That will be on phase 2 of the Impact Playbook. And this is focusing on methodologies and data collection, which is, I know, is something that people are really interested in, because this is, again, it's like that next step after the design and how you can really collect the data to tell your story. I would really like to thank everyone who's been involved so far. Again, this is the formal part of the thank you. We're all going to stay for the next 30 minutes. But thank you to Maya, to Daphne, to Marco, to Rob, who's behind the scenes looking at the questions. Also, huge thanks to Tamara and Gina, who are just awesome and who make things like this happen. And At and Georgia and Nick, who also help with the marketing communications.